Good evening and welcome to the national news broadcast on ChannelEye. We are ready to bring you the top stories from home and around the world. I'm Natalia Viravardhana.
I'm Ovin Hettiarachchi and here are today's top stories. Pakistan's Prime Minister arrives in the country. 3 bilateral agreements on technology, education and investment signed. Bilateral talks commenced between both the Prime Ministers. Cabinet approval granted to purchase 100,000 vaccines out of 13.5 million COVID-19 jabs. The report of the Presidential Commission of East Sunday attacks presented to the Parliament. The government decides to purchase paddy for competitive rates with the private sector.
And now on the top story for tonight, Prime Minister of Pakistan Imran Khan arrived in Sri Lanka for a 2-day official visit. Prime Minister Imran Khan was received by his Sri Lankan counterpart Mahinda Rajapaksa at the Bandaranaike International Airport upon his arrival to the island nation. Prime Minister Imran Khan, who arrived upon an invitation extended by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, was accompanied by a high-level delegation for the visit. Prime Minister Imran Khan, who is a Cricket World Cup winner, is the 22nd Prime Minister of Pakistan. This is Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's first official visit to Sri Lanka since taking office in 2018 and his first foreign visit in 2021. The Sri Lankan Armed Forces accorded with a guard of honour and other military courtesies in welcoming the Prime Minister Imran Khan. Chief of Defence Staff and Sri Lanka Army Commander General Shavendra Silva and senior military officers were present at this occasion. Subsequently, Prime Minister Khan was introduced to a delegation of cabinet ministers and other Sri Lankan dignitaries by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Prime Minister Imran Khan was accompanied by a high-level delegation, including members of the cabinet and senior officials. The high-level delegation was introduced to the Sri Lanka's Prime Minister at this occasion. The Pakistani Prime Minister also made a note in the commemorative book for special guests at the airport, marking his visit to Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka and Pakistan reached 3 agreements on education and to promote investments. The relevant agreements were signed following official discussions between the Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Commencing the 2-day official visit of Sri Lanka, Pakistan Prime Minister arrived in the Temple Trees this evening for the bilateral talks. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa warmly welcomed the Pakistan state leader. Subsequently, bilateral discussions were commenced. 3 agreements were signed following the bilateral talks. Ministers Dinesh Gunawardena, Professor G.L. Piris, Bandulu Gunawardena, Prasanna Ranatunga, Mahinda Nandalutgamage, Ali Sabri and Namal Rajapaksa, as well as State Ministers Tharaka Balasurya, Lohan Ratwatte and Ajit Niwad Kabral were present at this occasion. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and senior Pakistani officials were also present for the discussions. Prime Minister Imran Khan is expected to hold meetings with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa tomorrow morning. Subsequently, Prime Minister Khan will take part in joint trade and investment conference set to be held with the participation of business leaders of both countries. Prime Minister Imran Khan is also expected to take part in a sports-related diplomatic initiative set to be held with the participation of Minister Namal Rajapaksa. Prime Minister Imran Khan is set to leave the island nation tomorrow evening after completing the official visit to Sri Lanka.
Prime Minister of Sri Lanka Mahinda Rajapaksa and Prime Minister of Pakistan Imran Khan delivered a joint statement to the media at the Temple Trees. Both the Prime Ministers of Sri Lanka and Pakistan proceeded with the joint statement following the bilateral talks held with the participation of respective high-level delegations.
Prime Minister, you are not a stranger to the people of Sri Lanka. There are millions in this country who have admired you your leadership on the cricket field as a captain of the Pakistan national team. Your country continues to be a valuable bilateral partner, and Sri Lanka considers Pakistan a close and genuine friend. Our people hold Pakistan in very high esteem. Pakistan was a friend who stood by and helped Sri Lanka in times of great need. We are grateful for their steadfast support, particularly during my presidency when we had to fight a dangerous terrorist organization that was fully neutralized in May 2009. During our bilateral discussions earlier this evening, the Prime Minister Imran Khan and I agreed to work closely towards enhancing our bilateral cooperation in the economic sector and a number of other areas, including trade, investments, science, technology, defense, and education. We also agreed to pursue the opportunities presented within the framework of the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. We further agreed to work towards increasing activities in the tourism and aviation sectors. Sri Lanka believes that political stability and regional peace will be the key to achieve sustainable development, economic growth, and prosperity in South Asia. In our talks, we agreed to continue with the current mechanism to curb illegal drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and other illegal activities by sharing information through the relevant agencies.
I'm not a stranger to Sri Lanka. I came first time when I was just out of university, and when you were starting your political career, I was starting my cricketing career. And I have very fond memories since then of Sri Lanka. This visit is to strengthen our bilateral relationship. It is to strengthen our trading ties. Pakistan is part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. CPEC is one of its flagship program, and it means connectivity. And so I've asked my delegation here to find ways and means where we can enhance our trade and connectivity. And through CPEC, connectivity right up to Central Asia for Sri Lanka. We have also discussed other areas where we can enhance our trading ties, where Sri Lanka can benefit from Pakistan's connectivity in the future right up to Central Asia. And our trading ties will also mean that the two countries will get together, will come closer together. We shared a common problem of terrorism. Pakistan suffered 10 years of the worst kind of terrorism, where we lost 70,000 people. And we know that Sri Lanka for 30 years combated terrorism. And I'm pleased to say that Pakistan played its part in helping Sri Lanka to resolve this problem, which was impeding your development and your growth. And a country which relies on tourism can never progress if there is terrorism. Can't have investment if there is terrorism, because that's what happened to Pakistan. In those 10 years, tourism dried up, and hardly any investment came into Pakistan because of the threat of terrorism. So we share that common problem, and now we have faced another problem, which is the coronavirus. I know Sri Lanka has suffered like all those countries which depend upon tourism. Apart from that, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to invite you again in front of the media to Pakistan. And Pakistan has probably one of the greatest Buddhist heritage in the world. We recently discovered a sleeping Buddha, which is probably the biggest in the world. It's a 40 feet sleeping Buddha, because the north of Pakistan was the center of the Gandhara civilization, the ancient Buddhist civilization. So we are also going to invite people from Sri Lanka to come over, and we are planning a Buddhist trail where all the great shrines and places for those from the Buddhist community, the religion, can come over to our country. And of course, I start with inviting you most of all, Mr. Prime Minister. And thank you again for your hospitality.
No, thank you very much. And thank
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health has planned to administer COVID-19 vaccines to 14 million people from the total population of the country. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to purchase 13.5 million vaccines in this regard. The relevant proposal to purchase the COVID-19 vaccines was presented to the Cabinet of Ministers by Ministers Professor Channa Jayasumana. Also, the Cabinet approval has been granted to sign the COVAX facility agreement to expedite the process to acquire COVID-19 vaccines. The Cabinet of Ministers has granted approval to purchase 10 million Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines from the Serum Institute of Science in India at a cost of $52 million. A total of 3.5 million COVID-19 vaccines produced by AstraZeneca Institute in Britain also expected to be purchased by the government. A COVID-19 inoculation program was initiated today for the residents of Bandaranaike Mawatha area in Colombo 12th. It was held at the office of Colombo North Medical Health Officer in District 1 of Colombo Municipality. Close to 1,000 residents received the vaccine accordingly. The COVID-19 inoculation program was initiated for the residents of El Vitigala housing scheme in Narhampita today. Close to 500 persons received the vaccine. Vaccination of residents in Vallavath area was conducted at the office of Vallavath Medical Health Officer. Accordingly, 845 persons were vaccinated today. A vaccination program was initiated at Hyde Park grounds in Colombo today. Approximately 1,000 people were vaccinated. A vaccination of the residents of Maradana, Slave Island, Suduella and Colombo 2 areas was initiated today. Health authorities have confirmed that close to 1,500 people received the vaccine at Philip Gunawardena grounds. Approximately 2,000 staff members of the Kadanaike International Airport have been inoculated. Another 1,400 are expected to receive the vaccine. A vaccination of the staff of the Mattala International Airport has been completed. The number of recoveries from COVID-19 has reached 74,299. It is a percentage of 93.18%. Another 5,000 COVID-19 patients are under treatment at various treatment centers. 18,681 patients have left the hospitals from the beginning of this month after recovering from the virus. Another 732 persons have left the hospital after recovering from the virus today. Another 222 COVID-19 patients were detected in the island today. 11,779 PCR tests have been conducted yesterday. A total of 2,043,982 PCR tests have been conducted so far in the country. 5 more COVID-19 related deaths were reported yesterday. The victims were residents of Colombo 12, Minuangoda, Nugegoda, Dunugaha and Colombo 13. The deceased were in the age groups of 33, 82, 69, 83 and 75. Police said 22 persons who ignored health protective measures were arrested during the 24 hours ended on 6 a.m. today. 3,232 persons have been taken into custody so far in connection with the offence. Meanwhile, Minister Pavitra Vaniarachi, who has been infected, later recovered from the COVID-19, joined a special discussion at Minister of Health today. Attention of the meeting was directed on the inoculation program, PCR testing, health guidelines and the current status of the COVID-19 treatment centres.
And back on Pakistan Premier's visit to Sri Lanka. Accordingly, both Sri Lanka and Pakistan reached 3 agreements during the official 2-day visit of Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan to Sri Lanka. The statement of intent to cooperate between the ComSets University of Pakistan and the Institute of Technology was signed during this occasion. Another memorandum of understanding was signed between the International Centre for Chemistry and Bioscience of the University of Karachi, Pakistan and the Institute of Technology. A memorandum of understanding was also signed between the Board of Investments of Sri Lanka and the Board of Investments of Pakistan. Minister of Foreign Relations Dinesh Gunawardena addressed the 46th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council via online video technology today.
This led to the compromising national security to a point of reviving terrorist acts on Easter Sunday 2019, causing the deaths of hundreds of people. The rejection of this resolution by the people's Sri Lanka was clearly manifested in the mandate received by His Excellency the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in November 2019. Based on this mandate, I announced at the 43rd session of this Council that Sri Lanka would withdraw from co-sponsorship of the resolution. I also stated that Sri Lanka would remain engaged with the UN system, including this Council. We have provided detailed updates to the OHCHR in December 2020, as well as in January 2021, on the progress of implementation of commitments that Sri Lanka had undertaken, such as continuity of the existing mechanisms, appointment of the Special Commission of Inquiry headed by a Supreme Court judge, achieving the SDGs, progress made in returning lands, demining, creating new avenues of livelihoods. These steps have been taken even as Sri Lanka was battling the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. For the past 1 year, in spite of these challenges, we held a free and fair general election in August 2020 and elected a new government with a 2/3 majority in one of Asia's oldest parliamentary democracies. It is regrettable that despite the spirit of cooperation with the HRC and its mechanisms, elements working against Sri Lanka intend to table another country-specific resolution based on the OHCHR report. This rejected report by Sri Lanka has unjustifiably broadened its scope and mandate further, incorporating many issues of governance and matters that are essentially domestic in any self-respecting sovereign country. I leave it to the members and observers of this Council to make their own judgment on whether Sri Lanka represents a situation that warrants urgent attention of this Council, or if this campaign is essentially a political move that contravenes the very values and principles on which this Council has been established, particularly at a time when legislation is enacted by some countries to protect their soldiers from prosecution in military operations carried out overseas, only points to duplicity and the hypocritical nature of their motives. This cannot but result in a significant loss of morale among countries engaged in the struggle against terrorism. The Council must hold the scales even, not going by hearsay, unilateral action, or one-angle doubtful resources, but adhere to its guiding principles. insistent on such ever-expanding, externally driven prescriptions, notwithstanding our continuous cooperation and engagement with this Council can pose numerous challenges. As the Council is aware, this is a critical time to the entire world in the last 100 years, where we need to be united in our efforts to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic and to revive the battered economies. I appeal to the members of this Council to take note of our continued engagement and cooperation on its merit and support us by rejecting any resolution against Sri Lanka. We believe that the extent to which the resources and time of this Council has been utilized on Sri Lanka is unwarranted and carries a discouraging message to the sovereign states of the global South. The need of the hour in face of an unprecedented pandemic is solidarity rather than rancor and acrimony arising from divisions within this Council. In view of these circumstances set out above, we urge that this resolution be rejected by the Council and be brought to closure. May I conclude quoting the words of Lord Buddha, "Siyalu sattvayo nidukvetva, nirogi veva, swapatveva." May all beings be safe, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings be well.
Continuing on with more local stories, Cabinet spokesman Minister Kehelia Rupavahini says that government has no intentions to conceal the report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on the Easter Sunday attacks. Addressing the media briefing held to announce the cabinet decisions today, Minister Rupavahini said that a report will be presented to the Parliament following its translation. Minister Kehelia Rupavahini said that as a tradition, the Commission report was presented to the President and such report should be discussed among the Cabinet of Ministers. Accordingly, he said if such a report were in English language, then these reports should be translated into Sinhala and Tamil. Also, he added that a minimum of 225 copies of the report should be presented to the Parliament. He further added that such process takes a certain amount of time. He also said that the report becomes a general paper after it is presented to the Parliament. He said that in accordance to the parliamentary traditions, party leaders should discuss in this regard and will be enlisted in the parliamentary documents. Therefore, he assured there were no hidden agenda behind this move and considered allegations against them as misconceptions in this regard.
The report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on the Easter Sunday attacks was handed over to the Speaker of the Parliament today. The report was handed over by Director General of Legal Affairs to the President, Harigupta Rohanadira. The report of the Presidential Commission of the Easter Sunday attacks was presented to the Cabinet of Ministers yesterday by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The President has instructed to present the report to the Parliament today. Speaker Mahinda Abeyewardena, addressing the Parliament session today, made remarks on the Presidential Commission report.
A decision has been reached by the government to purchase paddy from farmers in competition with the private sector. Accordingly, the government has said the price of 1 kilo of nadu rice will be maintained at 98 rupees without any changes. Although paddy will be purchased at higher rates, the cabinet approval has been granted in this regard. Also, the tradition to hand over 1,000 kilograms of paddy to the government by the farmers benefited with the fertilizer subsidy has been revoked. Accordingly, the price of 1 kilogram of wet paddy has been set at 46 rupees. The price of 1 kilogram of samba paddy will be 54 rupees and 1 kilogram of nadu paddy will be 52 rupees. Addressing media briefing held in Colombo today, Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage said a decision has been reached to purchase paddy with a competitive market even under the existing higher price rates.
Upadhyaya of Kotte Rajamaha Vihara sector of Sri Lanka, Sri Jawardenapura Kotte, Sri Kalyani Samagri Dhamma Maha Sangha Sabha and Chief Sanghanayaka Shastrapati of the Colombo Navakorale and Navatotamune Venerable Devahandiya Sri Panyasara Thera passed away today. The late Venerable Thera was 71 years of age at his demise. The late Venerable Thera held the position of guardianship in Sri Jawardenarame in Kotte Road, Colombo 8. Pitakotte Sri Nagaviharaya, Meethotamulla Sri Nagavanarama Historic Temple and Galnava, Upper Kalankutiya Sri Mandalaramaya. The late Thera, who was pioneering in Shasana and social services, rendered a yeoman's service in the promotion of Dhamma in foreign nations. The late Thera has taken part in the Pirit chanting ceremony of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation for the last 39 years since its inception. The Sri Lanka national cricket team left to West Indies last night to take part in a bilateral series. The tour to West Indies consists of 3 one-day internationals and 2020s and 2 test match series. The Sri Lanka national cricket team consists of 20 players. The captaincy of the one-day internationals has been given to Dimuth Karunaratne, while Dasun Shanaka will captain the 2020 side. The rest of the squad includes Danushka Gunatilaka, Pathum Nisanka, Ashin Bandara, Oshida Fernando, Dinesh Chandimal, Angelo Matthews, Niroshan Dikwella, Tisara Pereira, Hamidu Mendes, Vanidu Hasaranga, Ramesh Mendes, Nuan Pradeep, Asita Fernando, Dushmanta Chamira, Akila Dhananjaya, Lakshan Sandakan and Dilshan Madhushankar. Suranga Lakmal also left to West Indies, replacing pacer Lahira Kumara, who was tested positive for COVID-19 prior to the departure. Dasun Shanaka also could not leave the country with the team after misplacing his passport. The first T20 match between Sri Lanka and West Indies will be held on 4th of March.
That's it for tonight's English News Update. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.